Hi, and welcome back as I continue to tell my very nonlinear story um, about 10 minutes at a time. And today I want to talk about coming out to my son. And to be honest, I don't think today's video is going to be 10 minutes because it's actually one of my light-hearted stories, one of my simpler stories. So I want to talk about my parenting a little bit and just how it is that I came out to my son. Um, anyways, let me get comfortable. So coming out to my son, I'm not gonna say that it wasn't hard, but I knew that when I came out to my son and the time was right, I knew that I was. There was no doubt in my mind that I was gonna be accepted. Like I knew that I was going to be accepted because I know that as a dad, I did a good job raising him, and his mom did too. Um, like I don't agree with her on everything, and we've obviously had our ups and downs, which is why we're not together anymore. But I know that we never instilled in him any sense of prejudice or bigotry or towards anything. So I think that coming out to my son, I knew that my son was gonna view LGBT people the same way he viewed everybody else as just people. So I wasn't nervous about coming out to my son. However, when I started coming out, my son is one of the last people I came out to, just because I don't know, just because. So, um, when I came out to my son, if you guys recall my last video, when I talked about coming out to my wife and how we were messaging back and forth, we were messaging on Facebook, and she was logged onto the Facebook Messenger on her phone, but she had also logged onto the Facebook Messenger on different computers. I love how that painting looks. I have a little ADHD. I painted that myself. I love painting. It's one of my favorite things to do. But anyways, coming back to the story, I'm not gonna allow my ADHD to win today. Um, we were messaging back and forth. She was logged onto her phone. She was logged onto a couple of computers in the house, and one of the computers she was logged into was my son's gaming computer because she was doing some stuff on the computer, happened to log on to Facebook, never logged out, and now she was logged onto this computer. So as me and her were having the discussion, and I had told her how I had, kissed a guy, I had been with a guy or whatever. I was seeing a guy. My son was reading everything, and he didn't say a thing. Now, the next day, he mentioned something to my wife at the time, and she messaged me, and she was like, "Hey, just so you know, our son knows, and you might want to talk to him." And I was like, "Well, of course I'm going to talk to him." And I mean, I wasn't scared about talking to him. Like I knew, like I said from the beginning, I knew he was going to be accepting of me. I was just embarrassed by him finding out the way he found out. But I know that I beat around the bush a little bit with him. I had told him that I was gonna take him out to dinner, and we ended up. I was so nervous to like talk to him or whatever that I ended up taking him to McDonald's, and only because McDonald's was like right down the street from our house, so we didn't have to go very far. And I got whatever we were gonna get, and I was like, "Well, we're gonna eat in the car." And I said in the parking lot as we were eating the sandwich, I said, "So you read the conversation between me and mommy?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Okay." I said, "Do you have any questions for me?" He was like, "No." And I was like, "Well, do you know what I am?" And he was like, "Well, yeah, I think." And I said, "Do you know what being bisexual is?" And he was like, "Yeah, it means that, bisexual people like both guys and girls." And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "So I'm bisexual." And he was like, "Okay." And I was like, do you have any questions for me? He was like, no. I said, what are your feelings? He was like, well, you're still my dad and I love you. And coming out um, to my son um, and feeling his welcomeness to the whole situation was extremely meaningful. And I just told the whole story in like less than 5 minutes. So I'm pretty excited about this. Well, no, it actually took me 5 minutes, but I have 5 minutes to spare. So, um, I also came out right after that in a very public way, and I'll talk a little bit about that, and I'll give a little bit about that details on some other story. But that's how most people found out. It's I came out through a post on social media. And one of the people that found out in social media was my dad. I had told my mom in private, but I never told my dad because I was scared to tell my dad because my dad is this macho man. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna post about it on social media. I'm gonna do a coming out post. I'll have pictures of that at some point. I just don't have them today. But I came out, and the reason why I wanted to talk about coming out to my dad is because I talked about coming out to my son and his reception. And unlike my son, my dad's reaction, I completely didn't expect because I was scared to come out to my dad because I thought, my dad being a macho man and my dad being extremely he's a strong guy and he has a large presence. I for sure thought that that was gonna affect our relationship, and to my surprise, my dad, I can honestly say, has been one of my biggest supporters. My dad has talked about my sexuality to me on multiple occasions. He's been extremely supportive of my sexuality, of my becoming who I am, of me being comfortable in my skin. He talks about my sexuality in a way that it's welcoming and receptive, whereas my mom just doesn't talk about it. My dad makes me feel like this is who I am and this is who he loves and he welcomes it. And there's not much to say, but that I am extremely grateful for my dad and the way he makes me feel about me being me and about how welcoming my dad is. It truly was a breath of fresh air because I didn't think that's what was going to happen. I thought there was a chance he might disown me, and here he is, one of my biggest cheerleaders. So shout out to my dad. I love you, man. I had a conversation with him, and I'll close with this conversation where once I came out, um, my dad drinks. We all drink in my family. Me and my dad, we were drinking. We were actually doing shots of tequila, and my dad said, "Hey, man," and I was like, "Hey." He goes like, "So I saw you came out," and I was like, "Yeah." And he goes like, "I just want you to know that you're one of the strongest men I know, and you're a powerful man." And I was like, "Thank you, Dad." And he was like, "No, for real. Doing what you did took a lot of balls. It's not anybody can come out after living a life as a heterosexual man and having a whole family, and for him to stand up and so publicly say, hey, this is me, this is my personality, this is who I'm gonna be, and this is what makes me happy. I admire you, and you're a strong ass man." And how, you know how I have talked about words that have been said to me that were hurtful? There have been words that have been said to me that were not hurtful, that have helped me throughout my life. And ever since my dad told me that 2 years ago, that stuck with me. And my dad has been a real MVP. So, anyways, that is today's 10 minutes of my very non-linear coming out story. I love you guys. See you next time.